Welcome, everyone, to those of you that are joining our countdown to the virtual Data Dive event. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you. Just feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're joining us from in the chat as you're logging in. We'll get started in just a minute. And have no fear, we will be recording this for those that are not able to join, and we'll share a couple of reminders in just a moment. So as you join us today, welcome. We're so excited to connect with you all and talk with you, counting down to the virtual Data Dive event that we're having. Feel free to share, introduce yourself, and tell us where you're joining us from. Okay, great. We're also excited to share that we are currently live streaming on LinkedIn. So saying hello to those that are joining us from there. So we'll go ahead and get started. Again, this is our countdown to the virtual Data Dive event where you get a chance to meet DataKind and our project partners. We want to share a huge thanks to those that made this event possible. MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, as well as Teradata Cares. So continue to put into the chat where you're joining us from, and want to share a couple of reminders before we begin. So first, as we connect with our code of conduct, one of our mottos at DataKind is to be tough on ideas, but gentle on people. So that means that people are at the center of all we do. So it's critical that we have mutual respect for one another and aim to exemplify DataKind's core values as we engage with one another. We are currently live streaming on LinkedIn so that others are able to join us. We're also recording this call and we'll share afterwards. And for those that are joining us in the Zoom room, if you have any questions, please feel free to place those questions in the Q&A portion of the Zoom screen. You'll see a Q&A button. Feel free to put all the questions that you have, and we'll get to as many as we can during our Q&A session. And finally, as we lead up and count down to our Data Dive event, please feel free to post to your social media platforms with the hashtag DataDive. So here's our agenda today. You get the opportunity to meet us here at DataKind. We'll share with you what is a Data Dive event and what is it all about. We're going to talk a little bit about the event theme and give you context for the projects that we're working on. We'll have the Q&A session, and then we'll share with you how you can participate. I'm thrilled to have the speakers join alongside me today. I'm Shana Lee, the Senior Director of Community Engagement at DataKind. I have my colleague, Caitlin Augustin, the Vice President. And then we also have our amazing project partners from the IMF, Marco Marini and Lisa Kolovich. So diving in, what is DataKind? Well, we've been around for a little over 10 years. We're a global nonprofit that harnesses the power of data science and AI in service of humanity and partnering with social impact organizations in that effort. We also team talented pro bono experts from a variety of areas, from academia to industry, with visionary change makers to collaboratively design innovative solutions to tough social challenges. We attempt to bridge the gap between technologists and the social impact sector. This gives an opportunity to work on problems for social good, and it gives those social impact organizations a chance to maximize their impact in the process. So in summary, and with that in mind, we do help mission-driven organizations identify their data and opportunities. We recruit and work with a team, a global team of pro bono experts to build what those solutions and tools can look like. And we stick around to ensure that those solutions are utilized and impact is achieved. Ultimately, success for us is when DataKind and our collaborative partners from those social impact organizations have created solutions that are adopted widely and contribute positively to sector level problems. So here's a couple of things that we have accomplished to date since we have been around. We're proud to share that we have a global community of 30,000 community members worldwide, representing over 174 countries. We have 5 volunteer-led chapter locations in the UK, Singapore, Bengaluru, India, San Francisco, Washington, D.C. We also are proud to share that we've completed over 350 projects plus collectively. We've worked with over 200 plus partners, resulting in $35 million plus of pro bono services that have been delivered, positively contributing to the challenges that we see across the social sector. So with that said, that's a little bit about DataKind. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Caitlin, to share more about the DataDive event.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our 2023 Fall Data Dive. I'm so thrilled that all of you are here in the room with us or on LinkedIn or watching this after the fact. Data Dives are amazing events. They're one of our favorite ways to build community and to start to tackle some of these wicked problems. We think of them as high energy marathon style happenings. So think of a hackathon, but for social good. We bring together mission-driven organizations like the IMF alongside folks like you, individuals who are driven to be pro bono volunteers, be a data scientist, developer, designer, or just a data do-gooder. We need volunteers from all types, from all communities into these conversations. And the idea is that over the course of the weekend, you will be able to bring your talent and skills toward these big, wicked problems that we're working on. So if we go to the next slide, just to give you a little bit of a sense, the last data dive we had over 700 individuals working across 4 projects. We had 31 countries represented and every continent except for Antarctica. In our live kickoff event, so we're going to have a kickoff next week leading into this the next data dive, we had 300 attendees there in person, ready to start networking and engaging. And over the course of the weekend, folks sent over 6,000 messages. So really just a high volume of activity and information. So if you're on the fence, please take these numbers as an indication to sign up. Again, we can bring in volunteers from any domain, any skill level, and there is a role for you to contribute to driving data for social impact. Part of that is thinking of what does it actually mean to do a data for good project. So DataKind, we believe there are 6 major components to data for good projects. And you'll see that data scientists are just one of those. DataKind will provide the data sets we have worked with the IMF team to identify those problem statements, but we need folks who are representing all different sectors. We need data scientists. We need individuals with subject matter expertise, and that can be data expertise, but that also can be expertise in understanding the economics, or understanding the climate change risks, or understanding and being part of a translation team working with data sets across languages. We need social actors, people who live and participate in these communities, who are advocates, who are using data and information on the ground. And we need folks who represent the philanthropy community and those hand raisers who want to come forward and keep supporting work along the way. So regardless of where you are in your data journey, there's a role for you here. If you want to volunteer as a project manager or as a researcher, we need you there too. What it looks like is at the data dive itself, you'll be a part of a data dive team. This is where all of our volunteers come together to be a part of a team to pick a project or series of projects to work on. And you'll be supported by DataKind staff, as well as our core data ambassador volunteers. So we have a team of volunteers who have been volunteers for DataKind in the past, who have done multiple data dives, who are going to be around to help you, guide you, new team members through the process. And we'll be working closely with our partner organization. So you'll hear a little bit from Marco and Lisa from the IMF later on, but our partners will be around throughout the weekend to help us get that contextual knowledge and really ensure that we are working forward toward those problem statements. And how does it actually work? So first off, just to say this is a virtual event. Sometimes we do these in person, but you can join this event anywhere in the world just from your computer. And what you'll be doing is over the course of the weekend, you'll be joining collaborative work sessions where you'll be claiming activities and tasks. So you'll have a chance to analyze data, visualize that data, maybe connect new pieces of information that haven't been previously connected. And you'll be working closely to identify opportunities for initial insights or new prototypes that can inform future phases of work. I'll keep repeating this. Any skill level is welcome at this event, and we really are looking forward to supporting and engaging you wherever you are in your data journey. It's a great opportunity for volunteers to build new skills, test new skills, and make new connections. We keep moving. So how does this event actually work? So it's going to take place over several days. On Thursday, the 14th, we're going to be having our kickoff event. So at that kickoff event, this is a chance for you to meet other volunteers, meet the partner organizations. You're getting a sneak peek today, and meeting DataKind staff who will be working with you over the next 3 days. At that event, you'll have a chance to learn deeply about the projects and the outputs. If you're there live, you'll get access to those materials. You'll start to enroll in Slack and start to get engaged and ask questions. And we'll also have a chance for networking, for you to engage with others on the team and in the projects to learn more heading into Friday. And if we get to the next slide, the main DataDive event. This is running Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so September 15th, 16th, and 17th. This is the main event where volunteers are diving deep into projects. So as a volunteer, you can choose one or more projects, one or more tasks that you are most passionate about working on. And it's flexible participation. You can join for a couple of hours on Friday. You can join for the entire day on Saturday. You can join for just a couple of hours on Sunday. Whenever you are available, you can come in. So please know that as a volunteer, there will be a role for you regardless of when you come in to participate. These events are really great for you to be able to pick your own pace of work. So every volunteer will have a chance to claim particular tasks they are interested in or generate their own tasks. So you will also have a chance to bring your knowledge to bear in shaping the work over the week. You'll be supported throughout the weekend by both core volunteers and staff. So the same staff members will be available all weekend long, driving through the DataDive event. Now, an exciting part of that is just in each of the work sessions, there will be a report back. So you'll get to see what happened in each of the previous sessions. So you can pick up where the last work went wrong. Now, we move now to the next one. So what do we actually do and get out of this? And we've said it's a hackathon, it's a high energy event. We're working on a lot of data. There's a lot of us, in this room, in this conversation now, there's over 70 of us. What are we actually creating? Well, we are looking to start to build the path to answers to some of the social sector's most pressing questions. In this conversation with the IMF team, we're looking at tackling knowledge and information around climate risk and around gender parity in finance and financial decisions, some wicked problems that data can help unlock answers that can help inform policy and change. Now, one of the things we might be able to find is we might be able to find places to increase efficiency in problem solving and information gathering. We might be building improved systems to allow the IMF research teams to do their work even more efficiently. And we might be building algorithms that can help do those future predictions and do those next steps of analysis. And all of the work that gets completed in the course of the DataDive weekend, that will be packaged up. So we might be following up with you to give us a little bit more information or looking for your assistance in putting together a report where all this information will be handed off to the IMF teams in a very actionable way to keep the work moving forward. And so I alluded to this, but I'm really thrilled to talk about this event's theme. We're focusing on finance, climate, and gender. three very big topics there. What we're looking at is the question around climate risk and understanding what the built environment looks like so that we can help improve resiliency to climate change and climate disasters. And we're also looking at a separate question around gender equity. So how does spending change on a local level, and how does that differ between male and female spending so that we can understand consumption patterns that can then improve and change the approach to policy decision-making. And with that, I'm thrilled to hand it over now to Marco to tell us a little bit about that first project around climate.
Thank you so much, Caitlin and Shanna, and hi, everyone. My name is Marco Marini. I'm from the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. And with my colleague, Lisa, we are representing a number of colleagues from IMF who work with DataKind to organize this exciting event next week. And so this is our first experience for IMF with the DataDive. So we are very grateful to DataKind for this opportunity. And we are excited to work with so many bright people around the world to resolve some of the data challenges that our organization is facing. And as many of you, the IMF is an international organization that includes 190 countries. So we are truly a global organization, and we help these countries promote sound policies that can support financial stability, economic well-being, job creations, but also policies that address the challenges of climate change, such as mitigation policies, adaptation policies, and sort of transitions to a low carbon economy. Now, the first challenge that we are proposing is exactly related to climate change. And, data and indicators related to the effects of climate change on the economy are still lacking. And the IMF has taken the lead in several initiatives to fill these data gaps with other international organizations and national governments, with the idea of building data sets that can help governments take good decisions. So what are we asking the data science community in this DataDive? So we are asking you to help us build a global census of structures. Structures like buildings, houses, factories, roads, bridges, everything that is part of the built-up environment. We know that there are several data sets out there that can help us achieve this very ambitious goal, like Google's open buildings, Microsoft building footprints, which essentially use satellite images and other information to identify structures. And we want to leverage these resources and, of course, not start from scratch. And so our goal is really to make this census eventually available to countries so that governments and policymakers can assess risk that these structures face from climate hazards, like floods, hurricanes, heat waves, and others, which can, of course, help government take appropriate climate policies for their populations. Of course, we are not expecting to build this census in 3 days, but we are hoping that the DataDive can really, with the help of hundreds of volunteers, can help us move in the right direction by identifying resources, tools, algorithms that can help us achieve, again, this ambitious goal. So I'm going to stop here, and I'll be happy to take questions perhaps in the end. But now I'm going to give the floor to my colleague, Lisa, who will present to you another exciting challenge for our DataDive next week. Lisa, over to you.
Thanks so much, Marco. And let me also express our team's gratitude to DataKind and to you, the data scientists, as we join forces and think about creative ways to use data to better design policies to promote gender equality. Now, we know that economically empowering women promotes inclusive growth and stability, and it's a key part of the solution that we at the IMF are looking at in terms of addressing the weakest medium-term global growth outlook we've seen in decades. Our research shows time and time again that there are sizable growth and economic resilience gains when women are more economically empowered and gender gaps are narrowed. But empowering women requires closing gender gaps that are large across many dimensions, such as labor force participation, education, health, access to finance, legal status, wage, leadership. And these large gender gaps, they also point to missed opportunities to develop, to utilize, and to allocate productive human resources that harms not only women, but also societies as a whole. So to address this, last year, the IMF Executive Board endorsed our first ever gender strategy, which encourages or requires staff to integrate a gender lens to our economic analysis and policy advice. And under this strategy, we are now working to consider gender differentiated outcomes in traditional areas of focus for the IMF, which includes fiscal, monetary, the financial sector, and structural reforms. But what we know is that this kind of analysis requires high quality, micro level data to really perform rigorous analysis and produce the evidence that really helps quantify the impacts of gender inequality. And one of the most pressing gender gaps that we face is this lack of access to micro level data on consumption patterns. What individuals consume and how they consume it are key indicators of welfare, and understanding these consumption patterns that they differ between genders allows us to analyze the distributional impacts of policy changes. So for example, if a government introduces an excise or a value-added tax reform, it can change the price of everyday products that are purchased by the household. But we know that men and women purchase different products, and so these tax reforms impact them differently. So understanding the interactions between policy reforms and consumer behavior can help governments and our IMF teams better design both the initial policy and then any potential mitigating policies. So the challenge that we hope to conquer with this DataDive is to take publicly available consumption surveys and then categorize these consumption patterns into types of goods, looking at the gender and the income of our consumers. And we want to do this across multiple countries and then ultimately harmonize the results to give us a broad data set that can be used to answer a variety of policy-related questions. But unfortunately, harmonizing the consumption surveys is simply not a straightforward exercise. These surveys are usually conducted by national authorities, and so they differ in terms of the languages, the questions that are asked, the goods classifications that are put forth, and they're also very expensive to conduct. So they're routinely carried out in advanced countries, but far less often in low-income and developing countries. If you could go to the next slide, please. And so we view this partnership with DataKind, with the community, as critical in overcoming these challenges. And we hope that through this DataDive, we'll be able to identify the relevant survey questions. We can translate the surveys when needed, and then group the data into different consumption buckets to ultimately create a set of consistent, harmonized consumption expenditure variables. And this harmonized data set will feed directly into tools that we have developed to support the macroeconomic and the distributional analysis of tax and spending policies in our member countries. And IMF teams then will be able to provide more tailored, granular policy advice with the aim of addressing and closing gender gaps around the world. And so Caitlin and Shanna, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Marco and Lisa. So what's next? You've heard a bit of a teaser about what the context and event theme is for our DataDive event, which is happening starting next Thursday, September 14th, running through Sunday, September 17th. And we're going to put a link to the chat if you would like to register. And we hope that you'll join us for the event. For those that are curious to see the kickoff, you're welcome to register as a general attendee. However, like we said earlier, we welcome those that want to volunteer, and there is a volunteer ticket when you register that you can indicate your interest there. So, you're probably curious, what are some of the things that can come out of your participation in this event? Like we alluded to earlier, there's a tremendous opportunity to work globally with others that have data science skills around the world. In fact, early indications are showing that we have more than 26 countries represented already. So we invite you to join us in participating in the event. It's a great opportunity to network and collaborate. It's an opportunity to explore and learn more about new data science solutions and ways to collaborate with other experts in the field. And ultimately, you are a part of our community, contributing to DataKind's mission of where we can harness the power of data science in partnership with social impact organizations. And so, as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in volunteering, you'll go through that link, click the volunteer ticket type, and then as you register, you'll have the opportunity to share the skills that you've developed or newly learned, want to test. And so these are some examples of where you're able to share with us during registration what skill sets that you have in preparation for that event. And then I'm sure another question that's going on in your mind, and by the way, if there are other questions, definitely put them in the Q&A chat. We're monitoring the questions that come in, so that way we have time to be able to answer those questions. So please continue to add anything that you're thinking about in the Q&A chat. But want to also share with you all helpful tips in getting ready as a volunteer. So when you register through the Eventbrite link, you will get a confirmation email. And starting early next week, you will get more information on how to join our Slack workspace. That is the main workspace that we will be utilizing in terms of communicating updates, opportunities to collaborate with one another. So we'll send that information starting next week to those who have registered as a volunteer. Be curious, ask questions. This is the type of conversation we want to have. We welcome that. Also, it's okay to not have everything figured out right away. We recognize that those that are joining us for the event, they're digesting all the great information that's coming their way. So recognize that this is a multi-day event, which is very exciting. And so there is no expectation to have everything figured out in one day. We definitely encourage that collaboration and networking with those that are joining us. Test your skills, share your expertise, and also learn. Again, this is such a tremendous opportunity to be able to connect, share, and learn from others. Document your progress. We'll share more about this in the Slack workspace, but it will be very important to document the progress that you have. That way it allows an opportunity for us to understand the work that has occurred. And we're available to help with any guidance as a DataKind team. That was also mentioned earlier. We'll be here throughout the weekend to be able to answer questions that you have. So with that said, we're going to turn it over to the Q&A portion. We're going to take a look at the chat to look for any questions that come in and continue to ask. So the first question that I'm going to take a look at, there's a great question around how will the footprint data help advocate for the SDG 13? So certainly want to allow if Marco or Caitlin would like to weigh in on that particular question.
I can take that. Well, it is the goal. It is to build a global census of structure that is publicly available using open data and available resources. So definitely this would be helpful for the Sustainable Development Goals when it comes to combat climate change, which is exactly what the SDG 13, this question is referring about. So I think it would be definitely a complement to other types of data that are being built under that sort of effort. There are also other efforts that where the IMF is directly involved. I want to mention the Data Gaps Initiative, which again is to fill data gaps when it comes to sort of climate, finance, distributional income, where the IMF and other organizations are working with G20 countries in particular to fill data gaps. So I think there are several initiatives that can benefit from a new tool like this.
Thank you so much for responding to that. There was another question in the chat around implementing policies and where IMF can support that effort, recognizing that sometimes there is challenges with that. So if either Marco or Lisa would like to talk a little bit around where, you all's role in helping to advocate for policies based on the result of the work that comes out.
Well, I can start and maybe Lisa can add to it. Well, it's we are trying to fill data gaps that can be then help the IMF provide better advice for member countries to develop better policies on climate and gender issues. But of course, then it's governments that are in charge of implementing these policies. I mean, again, the IMF has several function within its mandate, including again providing advice to member countries. So I think that's the type of implementation that the IMF will continue to do. But again, here what we are really focusing on is to filling gaps that can help IMF and member countries to take better decisions. Lisa.
Yeah, thanks, Marco. And let me just add on the gender side of things too, we did have a new strategy that came out last year that really does aim to come up with a more systematic approach to how we take questions on gender inequality and link them to our traditional areas of work under our surveillance, our lending, and our capacity development. And so our mandate really, again, is to focus on the macro critical side of things, looking at growth, resilience, financial stability, and really taking an evidence-based approach. And this is why I think the DataKind initiative is so crucial, because we really do suffer from a lack of access to data on a lot of the key issues that our member countries face. So identifying the gaps and then using them to build new analytical tools empowers our country teams to do the rigorous analysis that they can then present to ministers of finance, to central bank governors, and make the case for why gender inequality is so critical to economic growth. I recognize too that our strategy notes that this is a gradual process. It will take time for our teams to get up to speed. But last year we had more than 20 teams work on gender issues in some way, shape, or form. And if anybody's interested, I'm certainly happy to share the country reports that have looked at these to give you an idea of the kind of analysis that we do. But again, I can't stress enough how important it is for our teams to have the data and the tools that allow them to really delve into where these issues are hampering economic growth and how we can better design policies that will help support economic growth and women's economic empowerment around the world.
Thank you so much, Marco and Lisa, for answering that. The next question I'm going to ask Caitlin to weigh in on. One of those questions was partially answered in the chat. There was a logistics question around what kind of infrastructure volunteers would be working on. And also part two of that, Caitlin, if you don't mind, is talking a little bit about the data that's going to be used for the event. What kind of data can volunteers expect to engage in?
Great question. So just to recap the question that was answered in the Q&A, what's the infrastructure you're working on? So you'll be working on your personal computers. You'll be connected to your collaborative team through Zoom and Slack. We will be asking you to share your information back either through GitHub or Google Drive, whichever way you are most comfortable sharing. And so you're not working in a cloud computing environment at all over the weekend. In terms of the data that you are working with, it really comes down to your level of interest, experience, and expertise. For some of the climate and infrastructure problems that Marco laid out, there will be a chance to work with satellite imagery and other aerial and spatial imagery sets, but there will also be opportunities to work with data in Excel or CSV tabular formats where we are doing more statistical computations. There's a chance, Lisa mentioned that there's a tremendous number of household surveys we're looking at in multiple languages. These do contain questions in just a text format that we'll be looking at linking and matching across data sets. So you'll have a chance to work with a huge variety of data. What I do want to emphasize is that we are working with open data in this DataDive. So the data sets that we are working with are open and freely accessible and available. We are not working with privately held data. We are not working with PII. We're not working with purchase data. Part of this is DataKind's ethos toward free and open source. We want the solutions we build and the tools that we create to be open and accessible to as many organizations as possible. And so we are really skewing our work toward that open and available. Just Shayna, because I'm talking, I see a question just popped into the chat about opportunities for beginners. And I'm just going to say absolutely. So if you're a beginner looking to just get started, we do have questions that are non-technical questions. One of the big successes of this project will actually be a level of landscaping and information available on all of those open infrastructure data sets. Marco mentioned that Google has one, Microsoft has one. There are multiple ones. So we're gonna ask some folks to just start digging into the research and helping compile a list. We're also asking folks to help us with translation and to check our translations. We know as technologists that translation tools, they're very good, but they're not infallible. So we want people to help check our work there. We also, so much of data science is in the data cleaning and the data connections. And so even if you are a beginner and you are able to do quality assurance checks, you're able to be a part of that context and just providing the context on the overall information. We work with data around the globe, and having insights into the political context that might have caused data disruptions, or the local context around environmental disasters and information, all of that is extremely helpful. Back to you, Shayna.
Great. Thanks so much, Caitlin. There was a great question in the chat around how will it work for people in non-US time zones? Will there still be support available in the kinds of hours that we are more likely to work? So such a great question, because we have had virtual global events before. And we're excited to share that we will be offering some office hours time. So as you register, we are offering additional times in which you can connect with the DataKind team that allows more with other time zones outside of the US. So we'll share more information around those times that are available. I would also say what's been very interesting is through communicating in Slack, we have also organically seen very good movement where, to your point, earlier time zones may start with some work early and then share progress on where they are at for another group in another time zone to pick up on. So really excited about how we can really, build on the momentum even across time zones. But we are excited to offer additional times where we can connect in other time zones. Caitlin, anything else you want to add to that? I think that'll be stay tuned when you register for those specific times.
Yep, I would absolutely agree that it's join us in Slack and stay in conversation there. And then Shayna, back to you for another answer, just of ways to participate as a volunteer beyond a data dive. That's a question that just popped into the Q&A.
Yeah, great question. And I think there'll be a link that we'll put in around if you're interested in volunteering beyond the DataDive event. So there are a couple of options. We have a platform in which you can create a profile and share your skill sets so that when there are volunteer opportunities in the future, we're able to notify those who have created a profile and be able to share those opportunities as well. Another way to hear about volunteer opportunities and even other events that we're doing is subscribing to DataKind, to our newsletter. We send out a newsletter each month, and we share all the happenings that are occurring within the month, be it events, whether it's volunteer opportunities, or just what we're up to in terms of our work. So I would encourage those two opportunities, and we'll share those links in the chat as well. So thanks for that. Let's see, we're going to take a look at other questions that have come up. This may be a Marco and Lisa combined question. So there's a question around which 10 countries will the DataDive focus on and how they're selected? I'll also preface this to say that there is some work in finalizing around scoping that's continuing to occur. So we'll definitely have more information at our kickoff, but Marco and Lisa, defer to you on what you would like to share or even criteria or elements that you looked at.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, as you say, Shanna, the specific countries are still being finalized. We look at the number of factors, right? So, regional representations, source availability of data. Of course, we want to solve this challenge for data for countries where data sort of is more lacking, right? Because, for countries where there's plenty of available data, perhaps, we don't have like such a challenge. So we're also looking at, where are the biggest data gaps. Also, the countries where there are more sort of climate risk and perhaps diversified climate risk, different risk. And so, yeah, we are looking at a sort of a number of sort of criteria, right, that eventually will result in, we hope, a good selection of countries also because we want to kind of narrow down this list to a kind of manageable number of countries that perhaps can where volunteers can focus rather than have like all countries in the world. But of course, also we want to identify countries that could be helpful, like in the scale up whatever we find for countries to similar country. And so perhaps we find if we find a solution that works for a specific country that is similar to other countries in the region or other countries that face similar challenges. So yeah, we're also kind of hoping that whatever we learn for the countries we select eventually can be applied to other countries.
Great, thanks for that, Marco. There was another great question in the Q&A. Keep them coming if you have them. How are you going to allocate tasks to volunteers and when is this going to take place? So once you register as a volunteer, you will get an email. It will come from our registrant platform, Eventbrite, that'll share with you information on first joining our Slack workspace, which is where we will contain information like our project briefs, the tasks that volunteers can take a look at and actually claim. So based on the tasks and your interest and skill level, you can take a look at the things that you want to participate in. We're having our kickoff next Thursday, which again, we'll share more details on the context of the project, specific outputs, where to access those tasks. And then you have the opportunity to choose the project that resonates with you most. It could be one or both if you'd like. And then from there, you'll be able to see the task in which you would like to claim. So Caitlin, is there anything you'd like to add to that question in particular?
No, just to reemphasize, we want you as volunteers to work on the projects and the questions that you're most interested in. So this is a great chance for you to stretch your skills and try something new. It's also a great time to just continue to work within your zone of expertise. Once a volunteer claims a task, others can still work on it. We aim to have like 3 to 4 individuals each working on a task, knowing that part of this journey is you're all going to approach a problem a slightly different way, and we can learn from those particular steps and those processes of getting to an answer. So don't feel shy when you look to try to claim activities and take on work. Just try to claim what you are able to accomplish within the time you have available. So if you're available for 4 hours, maybe you pick one thing to work on, not 6 things to work on. But this is also where the staff and core volunteers will be helpful guides to you along the way. Shana, I'm going to kick it back to Lisa, though, because Marco had answered on the countries answer from the climate team side. But Lisa, I know part of the conversation that we had when we started to shape this project was around ensuring a diversity of language spoken and the context of many of the countries represented in the study. And I wonder if you could share your thoughts as to the countries being picked for this project, but also the ultimate ambition of the project itself.
Sure. Thanks, Caitlin. So yes, the idea is, of course, we'd like to pick countries that are, around the world. We don't want to focus just on advanced countries. We'd really like to focus on kind of all of our area departments and then to different income levels, which helps provide us with more insights into how do we design policies for different kinds of countries, because we know that while some effects are certainly kind of global in a sense, we know that policies typically have to be more tailored and more focused and account for country level specifics. So the idea was to see if we can get different regions, different languages, different cultures, different backgrounds, and really help us hone in on where we see different kinds of policy challenges. One issue that we of course face is just what's publicly available. And so some of our selection is unfortunately driven by that, but our ultimate goal really is to get as broad of coverage of our members as we can. But again, really trying to make sure that we don't forget about the low income and developing countries, where we know these surveys are, again, very expensive and hard to conduct, but we're hoping to gain a lot of insight and information on the low income and developing countries through this exercise.
Great, thanks for that. And then Caitlin, I have one other question in the chat for you as well, if you'd like to weigh in on. Of course, we mentioned that we welcome all data science skills, but someone was curious if there's any kinds of tools or skills to brush up on before the event that may be helpful.
It's a great question. So I would say, if you have a preferred programming language, if you're working in Python, if you're working in R, if you're working in something else, make sure that you're coming ready to work in your preferred language. In terms of, tools or general skills, we will be doing a lot of data extraction. We will, you've heard statistics mentioned a number of times. We'll be doing a lot of statistics, but that really this is an opportunity to be exploratory and to work, on a number of different approaches and engagements. So again, any skills you want to test, any skills you want to bring to the table would be great. I'm actually also going to ask Marco and Lisa to offer what type of context might be great for folks to brush up on. So both of you, you're representing two different teams at the IMF, working on two different sets of problems. Are there kind of topical areas, pages even in the IMF that folks maybe should go to read to learn a little bit more about the broad department and the work that you're doing?
Well, on climate, there are maybe a few resources that we can share, and I can put some links in the chat. The work we are doing to develop climate change indicators, for example. We have a dashboard that is publicly available. Also, we have some maybe policy documents related to IMF and climate. So that's perhaps very good for context. In terms of maybe data science, we're going to have to work with geospatial data. So anything that occurs is related to, how to visualize and collect and process, transform geocoded information. I think will be quite important. So yeah, definitely we are going into that direction.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
Oh, sorry. Just going to add on the gender side here. So certainly we have all of our country reports are publicly available. I'm happy to, again, provide links to those in the chat so I can direct you to a few of the countries where we've done quite a bit of intensive deep dive analysis on gender issues. IMF.org/gender has links to kind of all the papers, the different analytical work that we've done. It gives you an idea of how we approach gender issues of the fund, again, with this macro critical view and how we approach our evidence-based analysis. And then certainly too, if you're not familiar with household survey data, I think a great place to start too is the World Bank and look at the kind of work that they do with the LSMS data, the consumer expenditure data, and other different kinds of household survey data. So I think all of that would be helpful, but I'll put up some of the links too in the chat just now.
Thanks so much for that, Marco and Lisa. There was a question in the chat that I believe got answered, but I think it might be helpful, Caitlin, to give a little bit of insight. It was a question kind of related to scoping, sort of, was the project already brought to DataKind? Is there a role at the event or for volunteers in that area, kind of talking about how the partnership occurred leading up to this event?
That's a great question. And I'm going to ask Rachel, who's so helpfully managing the chat, to link out her great blog on the scoping process for DataKind. So for folks who are new to DataKind, we start with the questions, not the data. So we entered conversations with the IMF teams of what are the questions that are most pressing now? What are their two teams looking to answer? And you've heard a bit about that. And from that, understanding where can data and technology be a part of the solution. So honing in from these major questions to what can data be a reasonable part of building a solution, and then honing down a little further of what can we push forward in a 3-day event and what should be saved to advance in a longer term engagement. So that was our process. Great, ideas, and really, the value of this work coming from the IMF team and the DataKind team really saying, here's the technology, here's the possibility of what can happen within the weekend. So tremendously collaborative to get to the DataDive next week. Now, you're going to learn stuff as volunteers, and we're going to learn stuff as a staff team, and the IMF will learn things as a partner team. That's the intent of a DataDive. So over the course of the weekend, you can raise new questions, you can offer new approaches, you can make suggestions of new data sets as we go through the weekend. So it continues to be a collaborative, learning, exploratory, and rapid prototyping event.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. It looks like we've responded to all of the questions in the chat. So I have one more personally for myself that I would like to ask all of our speakers, which is, what are you looking most forward to with the DataDive event next week? And I'm happy to lean into first, the thing that I get excited about, of course, in working with our community is just that, seeing the energy, the expertise of people that are showing up ready and willing to help, and really see that momentum carry throughout the weekend. And so that's what I'm most excited about. I'll turn it to Lisa next, if you'd like to share, and then Marco and Caitlin.
Thanks, Jenna. So yes, again, the energy, the enthusiasm, just that I've seen from the DataKind team is fantastic. It's invigorating, and it keeps us very motivated, I think, to keep working on these topics when we know that the data pose an issue for us. And so I'm excited to see what you all can come up with. I mean, we approach this from this kind of econometric modeling economist lens, but thinking about new ways to visualize data, to understand data, and to really to find the data that we can use to answer these important policy questions, and to then see that change on the ground. I mean, that excites me. So I'm thrilled to be a part of this, and looking forward to seeing what we come up with together.
Yeah, and I second, what Lisa and Shanna said. I'm excited to see how this will play out. With the volunteers, and how they're gonna address the challenges that we are proposing. I also want to have that. This is really critical for the fund. I mean, these are important policy aspects, right? It's not just like challenges that perhaps specific populations or specific countries face. This is really these are global challenges that all countries and all in all parts of the world are facing. So we are hoping again that we can attract the data science community to help us in resolving these challenges, because again we want to support evidence-based policy making, and we can only do that by using all types of data, right? Not just like traditional official data, by using data that are widely available. Not only data, but also techniques and data science, machine learning, and the like that can help us step up our efforts in areas where as I said, the data are lacking or are not sort of widely available and not widely organized. And so I hope that with that we can jumpstart, I'd say, the work that we are doing in these areas in a way that can lead us to achieve our ambitious goals.
I'll echo everything that Marco, Lisa, and Shana said, and just say, we're at this pivotal moment of within the data science, machine learning, AI community, where technologies and approaches have been made accessible in the past 6 months through large language models and other computing advances that weren't even available last fall. And to be able to bring those opportunities to bear on problems of critical global importance, and to have the DataKind community really rise to this challenge of starting to move the needle and to be at the leading edge of applying data to these really pressing problems is just so exciting. I can't wait to see what we'll accomplish this weekend and how that will really set us up to keep moving forward and keep working on it.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. So as a reminder, what's next? And we'll make sure we get the right registration link in the chat. Apologies if folks had any challenges. So the DataDive event, it starts next Thursday, September 14th with our kickoff. And then we have work block sessions Friday the 15th through the 17th. If you're interested in volunteering, please register through that link under the volunteer ticket. And what'll happen is you'll get a confirmation, and starting the beginning of next week, you'll get an email from our Eventbrite platform that contains the information for you to start to join the Slack workspace, be able to say hello and connect with one another leading up to Thursday. And then Thursday will be the event where we will share much more information about the projects, the project outcomes, to aid you in figuring out which event you'd like to support, one or both. We will also record the kickoff as well. And speaking of recording, we are also recording this webinar, and we'll be sharing it with those that have registered to make sure if those weren't able to attend, that they'll have access to the recording. I think there was a question around if we'll also share slides. So we'll confirm that and also share that as well. So we hope that you'll join us next week. We also want to continue. Thank you, Marco and Lisa from the IMF, for joining us today and speaking. Also, another thanks to our event sponsors that have made this possible: MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth and Teradata Cares. And to the questions that were mentioned earlier around general involvement or staying up to date on news about DataKind, you can check out our blogs on our website, www.datakind.org. And if you want to subscribe to get access to our monthly newsletter about what's going on in the world of DataKind, you can do that as well. So again, thank you all so much for joining us. We'll make sure to follow up with an email with the recording, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks, everyone.